1. The Ford Edsel. If you look up disastrous business failure in the dictionary, you might just find a picture of the Ford Edsel. Picture the mid-1950s, post-World War II. America is booming, and the mid-priced car market is exploding. Ford realized they had a massive gap between their entry-level Fords and their luxury Lincoln and Mercury lines. To steal market share from General Motors and Chrysler, they didn't just launch a new car, they launched an entirely new brand, Edsel. The hype was astronomical. Dubbed E-Day, the launch was backed by a massive $50 million marketing campaign and a dedicated network of nearly 1,200 dealers. It was packed with wild innovations, like the Teletouch push-button shifter located right in the center of the steering wheel. But the Edsel was born under a bad sign. It launched precisely when the 1958 economic recession hit, and buyers were suddenly looking for smaller, fuel-efficient cars. Then there was the styling. The signature vertical horse-collar grille was viciously mocked by the public. Critics said it looked like an Oldsmobile sucking a lemon, or worse, a toilet seat. Even worse, the cars were built on the same assembly lines as Fords and Mercurys. The workers hated the complex assembly, leading to horrific quality control. Some cars arrived at dealerships with uninstalled parts literally thrown in the trunk. Ford's management scrambled. By 1959, they slashed prices, killed off the high-end trims, and completely redesigned the 1960 model to look like a generic Pontiac, stripping away the controversial grille and that buggy Teletouch shifter. It wasn't enough. Ford executive Robert McNamara mercilessly killed the project in November 1959 to stop the bleeding. Only about 118,000 units were made over 3 years, costing Ford up to $350 million. That's several billion dollars today. The Edsel taught the industry a bloody lesson. No amount of money or closed-door market research can save a product that ignores the reality of a shifting economy and real-world consumer tastes. 2. Volkswagen Phaeton. Fast forward to the late 90s. Volkswagen was furious. Mercedes-Benz had just launched the A-Class, stepping down into VW Golf territory. Ferdinand Piëch, the legendary and notoriously demanding head of the VW Group, decided to retaliate by attacking Mercedes where it hurt the most, the ultra-luxury flagship segment. The VW Phaeton was born. Make no mistake, this car was an absolute engineering masterpiece, sharing its DNA with Bentley. It packed a monstrous 6.0-liter W12 engine. Piëch's demands were legendary. The car had to be capable of driving all day at 300 kilometers per hour in 50 degrees Celsius heat, all while maintaining a perfectly silent 22-degree interior cabin. VW even built a bespoke, transparent factory with glass walls and hardwood floors in Dresden just to hand-assemble it. The fatal flaw: it was still a Volkswagen. The name literally translates to people's car. You were asking people to drop nearly $100,000 on a car that from 50 feet away looked like a slightly bloated Passat. Buyers in that tax bracket want the prestige of a Mercedes or a BMW. They want the badge to do the talking. VW tried everything to save it, and over the years they added LED daytime running lights, a touchscreen controller, and ultra-luxurious independent rear seating. Behind closed doors, they even developed a second-generation model. It was a sales catastrophe. In North America, it barely survived 2 years before being pulled. Globally, over 15 years, it sold a measly 84,000 units, missing its 20,000 per year target by a mile. Analysts estimate VW lost tens of thousands of euros on every single Phaeton sold. It remains the most brilliant, over-engineered failure in history, proving that you cannot cross deeply entrenched class barriers with engineering alone. 3. Cadillac Cimarron. If the Phaeton was an over-engineered dream, our next car is an under-engineered nightmare. Welcome to the 1980s. European compact luxury cars from BMW and Audi were flooding the U.S. market, stealing young buyers. General Motors panicked, deciding Cadillac needed a small car, fast. In 1982, Cadillac rolled out the Cimarron. They marketed it as a sophisticated European-style sports sedan. They threw the kitchen sink of standard features at it: leather seats, alloy wheels, air conditioning, and even a tachometer, the only one available in a Cadillac at the time. But consumers aren't stupid. The Cimarron was one of the most cynical examples of badge engineering ever attempted. Beneath the leather, it was quite literally a cheap, front-wheel drive Chevrolet Cavalier J-body. It even kept the Chevy's asthmatic 88-horsepower four-cylinder engine, but cost nearly double the price. It was an absolute insult to the luxury buyer. Realizing the gig was up, GM scrambled. In '83, they tweaked the grille and hid the Cadillac badges. They rolled out a Doro gold-accented special edition. By '85, they finally dropped a V6 in it, and in '87, gave it new headlights to try and scrub the Chevy stench off it. Sales cratered from a modest 26,000 in its first year to just over 6,000 by the end. In 1988, GM executives held an internal vote and voted 9-1 to kill it. The Cimarron is routinely listed as one of the worst cars ever made. It nearly destroyed Cadillac's century-old reputation, proving that if you try to swindle luxury buyers with a cheap chassis, the market will punish you mercilessly. 4. Audi A2. Now, let's look at a failure that wasn't born of laziness, but of being a little too visionary. In the late 90s, the Volkswagen Group became obsessed with the 3-liter car, meaning a car that consumed just 3 liters of fuel per 100 kilometers. Audi decided to execute this vision in the premium compact segment. The 1999 Audi A2 was an engineering marvel. To save weight, Audi built the entire car out of aluminum using their space frame technology, the first mass-produced compact car to do so. The 1.2 TDI version weighed just 855 kilograms and had an incredibly slippery drag coefficient of 0.25. It actually achieved the legendary 3-liter fuel goal. The problem? Building an aluminum space frame is very expensive. The manufacturing costs pushed the price of this tiny city car up so high that it rivaled the much larger Audi A4. Furthermore, in the early 2000s, buyers just weren't willing to pay a massive premium purely for eco-friendliness and fuel savings. Plus, the aerodynamic teardrop shape meant practicality took a hit. Audi tried to make it sportier and more fashionable to justify the price. They dropped in a 110-horsepower direct injection engine. In 2003, they launched the Color Dot Storm Edition, painting the A2 in blindingly bright colors paired with matte black body cladding to make it look rugged. It didn't work. Rumor has it, Audi lost thousands of euros on every A2. The plug was pulled in 2005 after just 176,000 units. But here's the twist. Today, the A2 is a highly sought-after cult classic. Its relentless focus on extreme lightweighting, aerodynamics, and efficiency perfectly predicted today's electric vehicle design philosophy. The A2 wasn't a bad car. It was just born 20 years too soon. 5. Toyota Cavalier. Wait, the Cavalier again? Yes, but this time it's Toyota's fault. In the mid-90s, trade tensions between the US and Japan were at a boiling point. The US government was furious about Japanese cars flooding the American market. To cool the political heat, Toyota agreed to a bizarre compromise. They would import the Chevy Cavalier, slap a Toyota badge on it, and sell it in Japan. They went all in. GM set up a dedicated finishing line in Ohio. Toyota leveraged its massive domestic dealer network in Japan. They boldly projected sales of 20,000 units a year. It was a culture clash of epic proportions. The build quality of 90s American economy cars was relaxed. The massive panel gaps horrified Japanese buyers, who were used to surgical precision. Even worse, the Cavalier's large displacement engines pushed it over Japan's strict compact car limits, forcing owners to pay exorbitant engine taxes for a cheap economy car. Toyota tried desperately to localize it. They made it right-hand drive, added leather wrapping to the steering wheel, widened the fenders to fit Japanese spec turn signals, and even carpeted the inside of the trunk. Toyota's racing division even made aggressive body kits for it. It was totally futile. Toyota's own quality inspectors in Japan frequently rejected GM's shipments right off the boat. At its peak in 1996, it sold a dismal 11,000 units, and by 2000, the political stunt was dead. Instead of opening the market, it just cemented the Japanese stereotype that American cars were poorly made. 6. Mercedes-Benz X-Class. In recent years, high-end pickup trucks have been printing money globally. Mercedes-Benz looked at this and thought, we need a piece of that. Enter the X-Class. Hyped as the world's first true luxury pickup, it wore the imposing Mercedes front grille, featured premium interior materials, and sported that signature floating infotainment screen. To save money, however, Mercedes didn't build it from scratch. They partnered with Nissan. Underneath that three-pointed star, the X-Class was basically a Nissan Navara. The chassis, the core mechanics, and even some of the cheap interior buttons were pulled straight from the Nissan parts bin. Buyers caught on instantly. They were being asked to pay a massive premium for a dressed-up farm truck. The motoring press roasted them. In a panic, Mercedes rushed out a version with a legitimate Mercedes 3.5-liter V6 diesel engine, desperately trying to inject some genuine German DNA into the truck. But this only made the already high price tag astronomically absurd. It was a bloodbath. In its first full year, they sold fewer than 17,000 trucks globally. By May 2020, barely 3 years after it launched, Mercedes quietly took it out back and ended its misery. The X-Class proved that in the information age, badge engineering is a death sentence. 7. Mercedes-Benz A-Class W168. Sticking with Mercedes, let's go back to 1997. Mercedes wanted to conquer the compact hatchback market and released their very first front-wheel drive car, the A-Class. The engineering was genuinely brilliant. It featured a revolutionary sandwich floor chassis. The engine was mounted at an angle so that, in a head-on collision, it would slide underneath the passenger cabin rather than crushing the occupants. This gave the tiny car the interior space and safety of a mid-size sedan, but that tall sandwich floor meant a very high center of gravity. In October 1997, a Swedish auto journalist took the A-Class through the standard Moose test, a sudden evasive maneuver at just 37 miles per hour. The car violently flipped over. The images made global front-page news. It was an absolute PR disaster. Mercedes initially denied there was a problem, but the pressure was too intense. Management made an agonizing call. They halted production completely for nearly a month and recalled every single car sold. They ruthlessly stiffened the suspension, ruining the ride quality. But more importantly, they took ESP, Electronic Stability Program, a technology previously reserved for ultra-luxury flagships, and made it standard on this entry-level hatchback. Over 7 years, they did manage to sell 1.1 million units. But factoring in the recall, the production halt, and the sheer cost of putting ESP in every car, Mercedes lost an estimated 2.5 billion euros on the project. However, this massive failure changed the world. By forcing Mercedes to democratize ESP, it pushed the entire industry to prioritize active safety systems, saving thousands of lives since. 8. Mercedes-Benz R-Class. Okay, one last Mercedes. In the mid-2000s, the SUV craze was heating up. Mercedes tried to invent a brand new segment called the Grand Sports Tourer, a mutant hybrid between a minivan and an SUV. The R-Class was massive, offering phenomenal luxury and 7-seat comfort. They even went completely insane and built an R63 AMG version, stuffing a 503 horsepower naturally aspirated V8 into it, allowing this land yacht to hit 60 miles per hour in 4.6 seconds. The issue was a severe identity confusion. It looked like an overinflated minivan or a high-end hearse. It didn't have the rugged, commanding presence of an SUV, and it was vastly more expensive than a traditional family minivan. It drove like a heavy commercial van. Consumers looked at it and thought, what exactly is this? Facing abysmal sales, Mercedes gave it a massive facelift in 2011. They squared off the weird oval headlights and gave it a much more traditional, aggressive front end, praying it would finally look like a real SUV. It didn't. In the US, it rarely hit even half of its annual sales targets. After 7 years of struggling, Mercedes killed it off in most global markets, letting it limp along in China for a few more years. The R-Class is the ultimate cautionary tale. A vehicle trying to be everything to everyone ends up appealing to no one. 9. Acura ZDX. Around 2009, automakers were getting obsessed with sloping rooflines. Honda's luxury arm, Acura, decided to lead the charge into the SUV coupe market with the ZDX. On the outside, it was a stunner. With a dramatic, sweeping roofline, hidden rear door handles, and a razor-sharp front end, It was pitched as the ultimate avant-garde lifestyle vehicle. But to get that shape, the engineers sacrificed literally everything that makes an SUV good. The sloping roof meant rear seat headroom was non-existent. Getting in and out required gymnastics. The rear visibility was basically zero, and the cargo space was hilariously small. It was a utility vehicle with zero utility. It sat on dealer lots collecting dust. In its final year, 2013, Acura management aggressively slashed prices and threw massive incentives at it just to clear the inventory. Buyers ghosted it completely. Less than 6,000 were sold over its entire lifespan. Ironically, just a little while later, the BMW X6 dominated this exact segment. The ZDX wasn't necessarily a bad idea. It just compromised too heavily on basic function and maybe arrived a couple of years too early to the party. 10. Toyota. Wilvi. Finally, we arrive at 1999 Japan. Toyota realized that 20-somethings were losing interest in cars. To fix this, they partnered with brands like Panasonic and Asahi Beer to create a youth-focused lifestyle project called Will. The flagship car of this project was the Will V. Toyota leaned into an insane neo-retro design. It had weird ribbed doors, an arched waistline, and a bizarre reverse-raked rear window. Toyota literally marketed its silhouette as being inspired by Cinderella's pumpkin carriage. Look at it. It looks like a car that melted in a microwave. Normal consumers ran for the hills, and beneath that controversial polarizing shell, it was just a standard first-generation Toyota Yaris. The weak engine and cheap cloth seats did nothing to justify the premium price tag Toyota slapped on it for its uniqueness. Toyota quickly added a canvas folding roof to lean harder into the retro vibe. But when sales flatlined, Toyota didn't mess around. They killed it in less than 2 years, replacing it with the sci-fi-looking Will VS and experimenting with early pay-per-mile leasing programs. It sold only 16,000 units, a joke compared to the 700,000 Yaris models sold in the same period. But here's the brilliant part. Toyota didn't waste the failure. They took every painful lesson learned from marketing to youth, the packaging, and the branding of the Will project, and shipped those ideas to America, where it successfully birthed the Scion brand.